For 5 years, the boy winced with every step. Every specialist said the same thing. Chronic pain syndrome. Learn to manage it. His father spent millions, consulted the best doctors on 3 continents, begged them to look deeper. They all prescribed more pills. Then a maid noticed something no one else did, and what she pulled from that child's body will leave you speechless. Kevin Houston was a billionaire. Penthouse offices, luxury estates, the kind of wealth that opens every door. But his son Simon lived in constant agony. 10 years old, and he moved like a man 3 times his age. Kevin tried everything. Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, private pain specialists in Germany, doctors who charged $5,000 per consultation. They ran MRIs, CT scans, nerve conduction studies. All of them said the same thing. Idiopathic chronic pain. No clear cause. Treatment is palliative, not curative. But Kevin couldn't accept it because Simon was all he had left. His wife Elena died of cancer when Simon was 5. So Kevin kept searching, kept writing checks, kept praying for a miracle. What he didn't know, the answer wasn't coming from a medical center. It was coming from the woman he just hired to clean his floors. Nina Reed was a maid. 29. No medical license anymore, no credentials that mattered on paper. Just a woman trying to keep her paralyzed sister in a decent care facility. But she noticed something about Simon that every high-priced specialist had missed. Something in the way he moved, something structural. And one evening while Kevin was away on business, she made a decision that would either give that boy his life back or destroy what was left of her own. What happened next? You need to see it for yourself. Before we continue, the algorithm brought you here for a reason, but it might never show you this channel again. Don't leave your growth to a random line of code. Secure your spot and subscribe so you never miss the unfair advantage everyone else is looking for. Now let's get back to the story. The Houston estate sprawled across 15 acres of manicured Texas landscape. From the outside it looked like perfection. Modern architecture, floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the sky, sculptures positioned throughout gardens that never had a leaf out of place. But inside, suffering. Not the kind you could see from the driveway. Not the kind that showed up in family photos. This suffering was quiet, persistent, like a wound that refused to heal and no one knew how to treat. Staff moved through the halls with practiced efficiency. Their voices were hushed, movements careful around the boy. They'd learned quickly. Simon was fragile, broken. A medical mystery that even his father's fortune couldn't solve. No music filled that house, no sounds of childhood joy, no running or playing. Just the careful, measured existence of a child who'd forgotten what it felt like to move without pain. And somewhere in that beautiful prison, a father was losing hope. Kevin Houston stood in his home office most evenings, staring at the photograph on his desk. There she was, Elena, his wife, her smile radiant, her eyes full of life. Beside her, a younger Kevin, confident, whole. And between them, Simon at age 4, healthy, laughing, before the pain began. Elena died 3 years later. Cancer took her in 6 brutal months. Kevin held her hand in that hospital room, watching helplessly as she slipped away. She'd been trying to tell him something in those final moments. Her lips formed words he couldn't hear. Take care of our boy. He'd failed her. Failed Simon. Kevin never forgave himself. If he'd caught her cancer earlier, if he'd demanded better treatment, if he'd been more vigilant, maybe she'd still be here. Maybe Simon would be different. The guilt sat on his chest like concrete he couldn't lift. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He threw money at the problem. Millions of dollars. The most renowned pain specialists on Earth. Private jets to medical centers across continents. accommodations that cost more per night than most people earned in a month. Every doctor said the same thing. Your son has chronic pain syndrome. We can't find a structural cause. His scans are relatively normal. He'll need ongoing pain management, possibly for life. Manage it. Accept it. Live with it. How could he accept that his 10-year-old son would spend his childhood as a prisoner to invisible agony? How could he accept that Simon would never run on a soccer field, never ride a bike without suffering, never just be a normal kid? So Kevin kept searching, kept paying whatever they asked, kept hoping that somewhere out there, someone had the answer. He didn't realize the answer wasn't coming from a prestigious medical institution. It was coming from someone he'd never think to look at twice. Someone who was about to walk through his front door with nothing but a hidden past, desperate circumstances, and the courage to see what everyone else had missed. Her name was Nina Reed, and she was about to change everything. The Houston estate sat like a glass monument in the heart of Texas Hill Country. 15 acres of architectural perfection. All clean lines, imported marble, and windows that turned the sunrise into liquid gold. Kevin had bought it the year after Elena died, thinking a fresh start might ease the pain. It hadn't. The house was beautiful and empty, like a museum where nothing was allowed to live. Simon's bedroom told a different story than the rest of the estate. While the mansion gleamed with cold elegance, his room looked like a pediatric ward someone had tried to disguise as a child's space. Medication bottles lined the dresser in careful rows. Pain relievers, anti-inflammatories, muscle relaxants, sleep aids. A TENS unit sat charging on the nightstand beside heating pads in 3 different sizes. His bed wasn't the kind 10-year-olds dreamed about. It was orthopedic, adjustable, designed for someone whose body was at war with itself. Simon sat there most afternoons, propped against pillows, watching the world through his window. Today, neighborhood kids played soccer in the park across the street. Their laughter carried on the wind, sharp and bright. He watched them run, their bodies moving freely, effortlessly, like it was nothing. Like it didn't cost them anything. He couldn't remember what that felt like anymore. Kevin found him there that evening, still staring out the window, his small face unreadable. "How's the pain today?" Kevin asked, the same question he asked every day, like checking a stock price. "Same," Simon said quietly. 7 out of 10, maybe 8. Always 7 or 8. Kevin nodded, adjusted his watch, cleared his throat. Dr. Morrison called. "There's a new specialist in Boston. Pioneering work in pediatric pain management. I've scheduled a consultation for next month." Simon didn't turn from the window. Okay. Another specialist. Another consultation. Another expensive promise that would lead nowhere. Kevin saw the resignation in his son's shoulders and hated himself for it. He wanted to say something real, something that mattered. Instead, he said, "I'll have Margaret bring your dinner up." "Thanks, Dad." Kevin closed the door behind him and stood in the hallway, listening to the silence. Downstairs, staff moved like shadows, their footsteps carefully muted. No one raised their voice in this house. No one laughed. They treated Simon's condition like something contagious, something that required hushed tones and careful distance. Kevin walked to his office and poured himself a drink he wouldn't finish. On his desk, Elena smiled at him from a photograph, frozen in a moment when everything was still possible. He'd failed to save her. Now he was watching his son disappear into pain, one day at a time, and all his money couldn't stop it. The mansion was beautiful. The mansion was perfect. The mansion was killing them both. Nina Reed arrived at the Houston estate on a Tuesday morning when the humidity made everything feel heavier than it was. She stood at the security gate, clutching her bag with both hands, trying to steady her breathing. This job was her last chance. The nursing home had sent another notice yesterday. Claire's account was 60 days past due. One more month and they'd transfer her sister to a state facility where patients became numbers and care became neglect. Nina couldn't let that happen. Claire had raised her after their parents died, worked 2 jobs to put Nina through nursing school, sacrificed everything. Now Claire was paralyzed from the waist down, trapped in a wheelchair because of a drunk driver and a moment of terrible luck. And Nina, who should have been able to help, who'd spent years training to help, was scrubbing floors instead. The shame sat in her chest like a stone. She'd lost her nursing license over continuing education credits. Paperwork she couldn't complete while sitting in Claire's hospital room, watching her sister fight for every breath. A bureaucratic technicality that destroyed her career right when she needed it most. She'd tried explaining, tried appealing, but the board didn't care about circumstances. Rules were rules. So she cleaned houses now. Tried not to think about the medical knowledge that still lived in her hands, in the way she automatically assessed everyone she met. Margaret, the head housekeeper, met her at the door. 50s, steel-gray hair pulled tight, eyes that catalogued every detail. "You're Nina Reed." "Yes, ma'am." "Mr. Houston values discretion and boundaries. You'll clean, you'll be invisible, and you'll keep to yourself." Margaret's voice was sharp as a scalpel. "The boy's medical care is not your concern. His doctors handle that. Staff doesn't interfere." "Understood." "Understood." Nina followed Margaret through the mansion, trying to focus on what she was being told. Cleaning schedules, supply closets, expectations. But her attention caught on the boy sitting at the base of the grand staircase. He couldn't have been more than 10, reaching carefully for a book that had fallen just out of reach. His face went white with the effort. His whole body guarded, protective. Weight shifted entirely to his left side. The way he moved, favoring his lower right back, the pain clearly radiating down his right leg. Nina's trained, I mapped it automatically. Compression pattern, likely L4, L5 region, mechanical obstruction rather than nerve damage. That's not neurological, she thought. That's structural. The boy finally retrieved the book and sat back, breathing hard like he'd just run a mile. Their eyes met for a second. His were gray, exhausted, holding more pain than any child should know. "That's Simon," Margaret said, her voice softening slightly. "Mr. Houston's son. Chronic pain condition. Very sad. Now the supply closet is this way." Nina followed, but she kept seeing that boy's face. That guarded movement. That specific pain pattern. She'd seen it before. And she knew what it meant. Nina kept her head down those first few days, cleaning floors and polishing surfaces like Margaret expected. But she couldn't stop watching Simon. Her medical training wouldn't shut off, no matter how hard she tried to ignore it. She noticed everything. The way he perched on the edge of chairs, never leaning fully back. How he positioned himself on the couch, always on his left side, right side elevated on pillows. The careful, protective way he moved through doorways, like his body was something fragile he had to carry. Every gesture told a story his doctors apparently weren't reading. The other staff talked about him in whispers during breaks. "Poor thing," the cook said, shaking her head. "Been to every specialist in the world. Nothing works." The groundskeeper nodded. "Mr. Houston spent millions. If money could fix it, that boy would be healed by now." On her 4th day, Nina found Simon in the living room surrounded by scattered building blocks. He was trying to gather them, but each time he bent forward, pain seized his face. She shouldn't interfere. Margaret's warning echoed in her mind. But watching a child suffer when she could help, that was asking too much. Nina knelt beside him and started collecting blocks. Their hands touched accidentally, and Simon flinched. Not from pain, from surprise. Like he'd forgotten what gentle touch felt like. It broke something inside her. That evening, She left a folded paper on the side table near where he usually sat. A hand-drawn chart with simple faces ranging from smiling to crying. Numbers 1 through 10 beneath each. At the top, she'd written, "Circle how you feel each day. You deserve to be heard." The next morning, the chart was filled out. Yesterday, 8. Location, lower right back. Sharp, constant, worse when moving. Her heart squeezed. He'd been so careful, so precise, like finally someone was listening. Their conversations started small. Nina would dust nearby, and Simon would talk. About school he couldn't attend anymore. Friends who stopped visiting. Life before. "I used to love soccer," he said one afternoon, staring out the window. "I was pretty good too. But I don't remember what running feels like anymore. Sometimes I dream about it, and when I wake up, I forget for a second that I can't." Nina's throat tightened. "When did the pain start?" "I was 5. Maybe 4. There was this playground fall. I landed weird on some equipment. Doctors said it was nothing, just bruising." He shrugged carefully. "But it never stopped hurting after that." Nina's pulse quickened. Playground fall. Age 5. Right when symptoms began. Foreign object, she thought. Has to be. Embedded deep, encapsulated by tissue. Everyone missed it because they stopped looking. "Simon," she said quietly, "has anyone ever actually felt where it hurts? Like really examined you with their hands?" He looked at her with those tired gray eyes. "Just scans. Lots of scans." "Why?" "Because scans don't tell the whole story," she wanted to say. "Because sometimes the answer is simpler than anyone thinks." Instead, she smiled gently. Just wondering. But now she knew. And knowing meant she'd have to make a choice. Nina shouldn't have been in Kevin's study at 10 o'clock at night. She was supposed to be finishing the upstairs hallway, but she'd seen the light still on, the door half open, and medical folders scattered across the desk like someone had been searching for answers and given up. She stood in the doorway, heart pounding. Just walk away. This isn't your business. But Simon's face kept appearing in her mind. That careful, guarded movement. That playground fall no one had investigated properly. She stepped inside. The files were extensive. 5 years of consultations, imaging reports, treatment protocols. Nina's hands moved through them with practiced efficiency, her medical training taking over. Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, private specialists in 3 countries. Thousands of pages. Millions of dollars. Then she found it. Buried in a radiology report from year 2, a single line that made her blood run cold. Small metallic density noted in lower right lumbar region, likely retained foreign body. Recommend monitoring versus surgical exploration. She flipped frantically through the subsequent pages. No follow-up imaging focused on the object. No surgical consultation. Just prescriptions. Pain management protocols. Physical therapy referrals. Treatments that addressed symptoms while the cause sat there. Documented, ignored. They saw it. They knew. Her hands shook with rage. These doctors had identified a foreign object pressing on a child's spine and chose monitoring, which meant doing nothing while collecting fees for managing his pain. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in treatments that would never cure him because curing him would end their income stream. What are you doing with those files? Nina spun around. Margaret stood in the doorway, face hard as granite. The door was open, I thought. You thought you'd go through private medical records? Margaret stepped closer. I warned you about boundaries. Nina's mind raced. I'm sorry. I was cleaning and saw papers on the floor. I was just organizing them. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Listen carefully. I don't know what you think you're doing, but don't get involved. The last maid who overstepped, who thought she could help the boy, was gone within days. Mr. Houston doesn't appreciate staff playing doctor. She paused. Whatever you think you saw, forget it. Stay in your lane or lose everything. The threat was crystal clear. That night, Nina sat on her narrow bed in the staff quarters, staring at Claire's photo on her phone. Her sister smiled from her wheelchair, brave despite everything. Nina remembered those early days after the accident, the helplessness, watching Claire suffer while bureaucratic nightmares stole Nina's ability to help professionally. She'd failed Claire when it mattered most. Now she had a choice. Stay silent and keep her job, or speak up and risk everything. But this time, she knew exactly what was wrong. This time, she could actually help. The question was whether she had the courage to try. 3 days later, Nina was folding laundry in the upstairs hallway when she heard it. A cry, sharp, desperate, the kind that turns your blood cold. She dropped the towels and ran. Simon was on the floor of his bedroom, curled on his side, unable to move. His face was ghost white, tears streaming down his cheeks, breath coming in shallow gasps. Simon. Nina dropped to her knees beside him. It's different this time. His voice was barely a whisper. Something's wrong. Something's really wrong. Nina's hands moved on instinct. Years of nursing training she'd tried to bury flooding back. She palpated carefully along his spine, his lower back, feeling for what she knew had to be there. There. She felt it. A hard mass beneath the skin, lower right back. But it had shifted. Moved from where it was 3 days ago. Now it was pressing directly on a nerve pathway. The foreign object wasn't just there. It was migrating, making everything worse. Please make it stop. Simon gripped her hand so hard her fingers went numb. I can't do this anymore. Please. Nina's heart shattered. This wasn't a 13-year-old trying to get attention. This was a child begging for relief from pain no one else believed existed. She helped him to bed, moving him carefully, staying with him as the acute wave slowly, agonizingly subsided. His breathing evened out. The tears kept falling. You believe me, don't you? Simon's voice was small, broken. That it's real. Nina looked at this boy, brilliant, isolated, gaslit by everyone who was supposed to protect him, and something crystallized inside her. Every second of it is real, sweetheart. She squeezed his hand. And I think I know why. The mass. The scar tissue. The pattern of pain. She'd felt something the doctors had missed, or refused to look for properly. Something foreign that didn't belong in a 13-year-old's body. Nina made a decision in that moment, watching Simon finally drift into exhausted sleep. She was going to help him. She was going to prove he wasn't lying, wasn't crazy, wasn't attention-seeking. Even if it cost her everything. Because some children are worth fighting for. And Simon had been fighting alone for far too long. Nina didn't sleep for 3 nights. She lay in her small room in the staff quarters, staring at the ceiling, watching the arguments war inside her head. The first night, practicality screamed the loudest. You have no license. No authority. No right to touch that child. If you're wrong, if you hurt him, you'll go to prison. If you're caught, you'll lose this job, and Claire will end up in a state facility where they warehouse people like broken furniture. She remembered the night of Claire's accident. The phone call. The hospital. The doctor's careful words. The spinal cord damage is severe. We're not sure she'll walk again. Nina had stood there, a nursing assistant with all this training, all this knowledge, and she couldn't do anything. Couldn't fix it. Couldn't take away her sister's pain. The helplessness had crushed her. Was she really willing to risk Claire's care for a boy she barely knew? The second night brought different arguments. Ethical ones that wouldn't stay quiet. Those doctors saw the foreign object. They documented it. And then they chose profit over healing, keeping Simon in pain for 5 years because treating symptoms paid better than curing the problem. Nina remembered her instructor in nursing school, Mrs. Patterson. Different from the housekeeper, Kinder. She'd pulled Nina aside after a difficult practical exam. "You have good hands, Nina. Better instincts than students twice your age. Trust them." But Nina had lost her license over paperwork, not incompetence. Did credentials matter more than capability? Should a bureaucratic technicality during a family crisis erase everything she'd learned, everything she could do? The third night, she stopped arguing with herself and started praying. Her grandmother had raised her after her parents died, taught her about faith when life felt impossible. Nina could hear her voice now. God puts people in places for reasons we don't always understand right away, baby girl. Sometimes you're the answer to someone else's prayer. What if she was here in this house at this moment for Simon? Nina opened her eyes as dawn broke. The decision settled over her like a weight and a relief at once. Tomorrow, Kevin was leaving for Dallas, a 3-day business trip. The house would be quieter. She'd have time. She spent that day gathering what she'd need. Sterilizing instruments from the first aid supplies. Preparing clean cloths. Reviewing her mental protocols. Her hands moved with certainty, muscle memory taking over. That night, a strange peace settled over her. Not the absence of fear. The fear was still there, sharp and real. But beneath it, something deeper. The peace that comes when you stop running from what you know is right, even when it might cost you everything. Tomorrow she would act. Tomorrow she would trust her hands again. And whatever happened after that, she'd face it knowing she chose courage over comfort. The house fell quiet after Kevin's car pulled away. Nina watched from the upstairs window as his driver took him to the airport. Dallas, 3 days, business meetings that couldn't wait. The staff had already retreated to their quarters for the evening. It was just her and Simon now. She found him in his room, reading in bed, positioned carefully on his left side like always. Her makeshift medical kit sat hidden in her cleaning caddy. Sterile instruments, antiseptic, local anesthetic she'd found in the fully stocked first aid cabinet, clean towels. "Simon," she said quietly from the doorway, "I need to tell you something." He looked up, curious. Nina sat on the edge of his bed, her heart hammering. "I think I know what's causing your pain. There's something inside you. A piece of metal from that playground fall when you were 5. It's been pressing on your spine all these years." His eyes went wide. "But the doctors said." "The doctors saw it. They documented it. And then they ignored it." Her voice hardened. "I can remove it, Simon. But I need you to trust me completely." Simon stared at her for a long moment. "Will it hurt?" Nina couldn't lie to him. "Yes. But not for long. And then it'll be over. Really over." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Simon's jaw set with determination beyond his years. "Do it. I trust you." Nina's hands moved with practiced precision. She positioned him carefully, prepped the area over his lower right back, administered the local anesthetic. "You'll feel pressure, maybe some pulling. Tell me if it's too much." "Okay." She whispered a prayer under her breath. "Guide my hands," and made the first incision. Small, precise, following the path her trained fingers had mapped. Simon tensed but didn't cry out. There. She felt it. Hard, foreign, encased in scar tissue that had formed around it like a prison. A jagged piece of metal, exactly where she knew it would be. She worked carefully, millimeter by millimeter, separating tissue, applying pressure, extracting what had stolen 5 years of this child's life. Then it was free. A 2-inch piece of corroded playground equipment sat in her palm, dark and cruel. Simon went completely still. His breathing changed. Nina. His voice was strange, wondering. It's gone. The pain. It's actually gone. He sat up, really sat up, without guarding, without wincing, without that careful protective movement. His face transformed, disbelief giving way to joy. Stand up, Nina said, tears streaming down her face. Try to stand. Simon slid off the bed, stood, took a step, then another. His legs worked without that familiar stabbing agony. I can walk, he whispered. I can actually walk without it hurting. They were both crying now, Nina bandaging the small incision with shaking hands, Simon testing his body like meeting it for the first time. Then the front door slammed downstairs. Simon. Kevin's voice echoed through the house. Where are you? Nina's blood turned to ice. He was supposed to be on a plane to Dallas. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. Kevin burst through Simon's door, and the world exploded. He saw Nina first, standing over his son with medical instruments scattered on the bed. Then the bandage on Simon's lower back. Then the blood on the towels. His mind went blank with terror. What the hell did you do to my son? Dad, Simon started. Security. Kevin's voice shook the walls. Call the police. Now. Nina held up her hands, the metal fragment still in her palm. Mr. Houston, please listen. This was embedded in his spine. This is what's been causing his pain for 5 years. I removed it. Kevin stared at the jagged piece of metal, but all he could see was blood. His son. A maid with no credentials cutting into his child's body. You're not a doctor. You have no right. His voice cracked with fury and terror. You could have paralyzed him. You could have killed him. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway, breathing hard. Grab her. I'm pressing charges. Assault. Practicing medicine without a license. Everything. The guards moved toward Nina. Simon launched himself between them. Dad, stop. His voice was raw, desperate. She helped me. The pain is gone. Look at me, really look. Kevin froze. Simon was standing. Not carefully, not guardedly. Just standing. His posture was straight. His weight distributed evenly. No wincing. No protective positioning. He looked different. But the fear was too strong. The image of his son with a wound on his back, this woman with instruments, it was too much. Take her to the security office, Kevin said, voice hard. I want her arrested. The guards grabbed Nina's arms. She didn't resist, didn't fight. She just looked at Simon, her eyes full of something Kevin couldn't name. You're going to be okay now, she said quietly. I promise. Simon collapsed, not from pain but from heartbreak. Sobs tore through him. Loud, messy, the sound of a child watching his only hope being dragged away. Dad, please, he begged. Please don't do this. But Kevin was already on the phone. I need an ambulance. My son's been injured. Hurry. At the hospital, doctors swarmed Simon. Emergency imaging, neurological assessments, blood work. Kevin paced the hallway, his mind racing between rage and terror. Dr. Patel emerged 2 hours later, her face unreadable. Mr. Houston, we need to talk. Now. She led him to a private office. Kevin's hands were shaking. Is he? Your son is fine. Better than fine, actually. She pulled up scans on her computer. His pain responses are completely normal. Full mobility. No nerve damage. The incision is small, clean, and professionally executed. She paused. Mr. Houston, whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Kevin sank into a chair. But she's not a doctor. She's just a maid. Dr. Patel studied him. I think you need to see something. Dr. Patel pulled up imaging on her screen, her face grave. Mr. Houston, there was indeed a foreign object embedded in your son's spine. It's been there for years. Kevin leaned forward, staring at the scan. A bright white shape, unmistakable. Now look at this. She opened another file. This is from 5 years ago. Your son's second year of treatment with us. She pointed to a line of text highlighted in yellow. Metallic density noted in lower right lumbar region, likely retained foreign body. Recommend surgical exploration or conservative management. Kevin's blood turned to ice. Someone saw this. Yes. And chose conservative management. What does that mean? Dr. Patel's expression hardened. It means they decided ongoing pain treatment was preferable to a simple surgical removal. Mr. Houston, your son has been on our pain management protocol for 5 years. Do you know how much revenue that generates? The words hit him like a physical blow. Kevin stood abruptly, the chair scraping back. They kept him in pain. For money. I can't prove intent, but the pattern is. They saw it and they left it there. Rage and realization crashed over him in waves. All those specialists. All those consultations. They knew. He thought of Nina, sitting in his security office, facing criminal charges for doing what these doctors refused to do. For actually healing his son. Kevin ran. Nina sat in the small security office, hands folded in her lap, lips moving in silent prayer. She wasn't praying for herself. She was praying for Simon, that the healing would hold, that he'd finally know what freedom felt like. The door opened. Kevin stood there, his face transformed. Broken open, raw. They knew, he said, voice cracking. The doctors knew. They saw that thing in my son's spine 5 years ago, and they left it there because treating his pain made them more money than curing it. Nina said nothing. Just waited. Kevin stepped closer. I've been blind. I threw millions at credentials and reputations and never once actually looked at my son. I treated him like a problem to solve instead of a child to love. He paused. Who are you really? I was a nursing assistant, Nina said quietly. Lost my license over continuing education paperwork during my sister's medical crisis. Fell into domestic work to survive and pay her care costs. Kevin closed his eyes. You had the skills all along. Skills without credentials are invisible to people like you, Mr. Houston. She met his gaze. No offense intended. Offense accepted and deserved. Then this billionaire, this man who controlled empires, dropped to his knees. Forgive me. You saved my son. You gave him his life back. And I almost destroyed yours for it. Nina's eyes filled. I just did what was right. No. Kevin's voice broke. You did what was brave. All charges were dropped within the hour. Kevin made calls to his lawyers, to the nursing board, to specialists who owed him favors. Nina's license reinstatement process was fast-tracked. Claire's care facility received a check that covered 2 years, with a promise of more. They returned to the hospital together. Simon was being discharged, dressed in regular clothes instead of a hospital gown, standing straight. He saw Nina and ran. Actually ran, his legs working freely, joyfully. He crashed into her arms, and they both cried. Thank you, he whispered into her shoulder. Thank you for seeing me. Nina held him tight. You were always worth seeing, Simon. Always. Simon pulled back, looked at his father. Dad, can Nina stay? Not as a maid. as family. Kevin's throat tightened. He looked at Nina. I'd be honored if you'd consider joining our family's medical team. Or whatever role you want. You've earned that choice. Nina smiled through tears. I'll stay. As Simon's friend. The rest we can figure out. 3 months later, the Houston estate felt different. Music played through open windows. Laughter echoed off the walls. Nina stood on the back lawn, watching Simon play soccer with neighborhood kids. He ran freely, his body finally his own, his face bright with joy. Claire sat in her wheelchair beside Nina, smiling at the scene, her care now managed by the best therapists money could provide. Kevin joined them on the porch, really present for the first time in years. He watched his son with wonder, like seeing him for the first time. Nina sat beside him. He's going to be fine. Kevin nodded, his voice thick. Thanks to you. You taught me that love means paying attention, not paying doctors. The sun set gold across the estate. Inside the beautiful house, a family was learning to live again. Sometimes God's greatest miracles don't come from credentials or wealth. They come from people who simply refuse to walk past suffering. That day, a maid became a healer, a father became present, and a boy learned to run again. All because someone chose courage over comfort.